Report by Jimmy Mbogo. What we've seen is that the talk of de-dollarization has cooled down. And now we are talking about simpler payments. Question is, what is this currency issue? Why is it very important in this discussion, and especially with BRICS? And of course, Ken Gishinga, you know, when you talk about the dollar being center stage to everything, Ken, it becomes of concern. Why are they backing out of this de-dollarization talk?
Well, many thanks, Noah. Indeed, since World War II, there has been a feeling that global finance has been dominated by what you call the G7 nation of families, the World Bank, the IMF, what you call the Bretton Woods institution, and the currency of choice, the reserve currency of the world, has been the United States dollar. Now, there are limitations to that because, number one, the availability in recent days has been an issue. When interest rates on the dollar go up, you see capital flight out of countries such as Kenya, emerging markets, but people still need to trade, even if interest rates on the dollar go up. So there is a new thinking that the world needs an alternative financial architecture that people still can continue, because one of the properties of money is supposed to be a medium of exchange. So if that medium is not available, it means people can't contain. So I think it's more of a proposition, really, that people should be able to continue trade despite the fluctuations of monetary policy in the United States.
And over the last month, Dr. Lueni, we've seen the president was very vocal in this discussion about it's high time that especially Africa as a continent to start trading using its own currencies and necessarily do away with the dollar, because we've seen what the dollar has done to the economy. We even entered the G2G, fuel importation deal just to make sure that the dollar situation is settled. But from where you sit, is this dream achievable? That is one. Or else we can find a sweet spot where it's not necessarily the putting talk of de-dollarization, but there are more alternatives, especially for countries like Kenya.
Noah, the de-dollarization is critical, as Putin puts it, but the journey of another currency is normally a difficult one. As you've seen in the Eurozone, the euro, even the onset of development of the euro, it actually really took a lot of effort. But even now, for these countries to come up with their own one single currency might really take a toll, given that the countries themselves, at least we have the ones which are domineering, like the China. The yuan is a strong currency. The ruble, this one of the Russian, and the real, the Brazilian, and also the rand. The rand seems to be lower. So achieving this might be a bit difficult because it's normally challenging to come up with the currency. But even if they came up with one, it would be very difficult to challenge the dollar. We have seen that in the euro, and we have seen that it is not even challenging the dollar as such.
And that step back, Ken, of course it shows how the dollar is critical in regards to global finance and global trade. And even with the BRICS summit, the central bank, the respective central banks and also finance ministers have been given an assignment to sort of go dig deep, look at this issue of local currencies, whether we can expedite that way. Talk to me about utilization of local currencies in participation of the larger global trade, especially for Africa. What will that mean if we enact that more actively?
That's a good question, and I think what Professor said is true about the prospects of a common currency being dim. I think what would be most interesting and most likely what will happen is what I call the internationalization of the renminbi. This is the Chinese currency, really having it almost at the same par as the United States dollar. And already that process began in 2009 when the dim sum bond was issued back in 2009. Now, I think when it comes to Africa, I think it's true we say that intra-African trade contributes almost less than 3% of global trade. And there is that feeling that if you are to boost uptake of local currencies, then that might boost trade. So I think that involves having settlement arrangements within the banking sector. And I believe I think it's the Afri-Exim Bank that has offered the settlement mechanism where if you buy, maize from Zambia, the Zambian kwacha can be able to be settled very quickly with the Kenya shilling. So I think it's the technology to allow that to happen. So it means it's more of a banking utilization. So one would ask, does that mean then trade will always have to go through the banking sector? That's a question somebody might ask. But I think when you talk about settlements, it's very much a banking, phenomenon, really.
Definitely. And still on that, Dr. I'm thinking now in regards to this issue of currencies and inter-Africa trade, which Ken has brought up. But I want to take a segue on another challenge that Africa is facing, the issue of debt. We talk about debt and our debt being dollar denominated, and when it's gaining against our currencies, then it becomes a very huge concern for many African countries. Might this be a route to, sort of a softer landing for especially African nations and this debt issue?
Yes, it might be because of the fact that when you look at the BRICS nations, they have some fundamentals. Like there's something that Russia offers, and as you've seen, we had a lot of challenge when Russia and Ukraine were warring, and when Russian products like oil and the other things were not able, the food were not able to come to go to other countries. So these countries, even if you look at China, there's something that they offer. So if it materializes, then probably it could be offering something to the African nation. You saw during the BRICS that Putin is promising a lot for Africa. They have food, they can take care of Africa and everything. So it could be a good thing if it were to materialize, that is. Yeah.
Okay. That issue of currencies and debt in Africa, creating sort of an alternative approach to a global engagement when we are lending and borrowing, especially from these multilateral organizations. Might this give the African countries and also, majorly the global South, a voice at the table to sort of have some controlling stake in a way?
Yeah, I think it does, because much of the reason the debt is becoming heavy has been because of the strengthening of the dollar, which is tied to interest rates. So as we speak right now in the United States, they have that huge symposium, what they call the Jackson Hole Symposium, where they really talk about America's monetary policy. Now, if they talk about the Fed increasing interest rates, it means the debt load of African countries become that much more higher. So obviously in symposiums like what's happening today in the US, obviously when they see the BRICS formation, the Global South meeting, it could influence the direction even they take in terms of how they manage their interest rates. So I think it's an interesting time. I think what BRICS do is they really introduce an international alliance that can be an alternative to a country. See, right now, if you get locked out of the current international financial system, you can't have payments through SWIFT, for example. So you saw Russia got locked out of the SWIFT mechanism.
Yes.
There is a feeling that, if you are not aligned with maybe the Western agenda, you should still be able to participate in global finance. So I think this is sort of like an alternative mechanism. So I will not be surprised to have countries that are members of both, members of the World Bank, the IMF, BRICS. I think it's going to be that's going to be the reality, that you're moving towards a multipolar world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's very, very important. I'm glad today we're talking about BRICS, and did not gamble are this comfortable. Yeah. We want to take a short break, but when we come back, we talk about BRICS membership. We've seen new admissions, of course, effective January 2024, if I'm not wrong. What does that mean in regards to the way BRICS is perceived? And also this specific entrance, what are they bringing on the table and what changes should we be looking forward to? All right, now we take a short break right here on Business Today. We come back with more. Stay tuned.